All right, so we're back for another deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're going to be looking into something I'm really, really excited about.
Oh, yeah.
And that is cultural practices in Black marriages.
Awesome.
We have some source material from a podcast document called Exploration of Black Marriages,
Oh,
and specifically their notes for their planned episode 2, which is all about cultural practices.
nice, nice.
So we're going to be looking at that today, and we're going to see what we can learn.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see this because I know that there's like a lot of different ways that Black marriages are celebrated all across the world,
Yeah.
right? There's so much diversity.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we really want to kind of like delve into today.
Yeah.
And
Like just even from the source material, I'm seeing that it's not just about, the Western traditions that we might be familiar with. There's
yeah,
so much more to it.
yeah, and I think one of the things that I'm really interested in is the role of extended family and community.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it seems like it's not just about the two individuals getting married. It's really about
Yeah, it's like a joining of it.
like bigger, yeah, like a joining of two families or even two communities in some cases.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is something that you see across a lot of different cultures.
Right.
And it's really fascinating to see how that plays out in the context of Black marriages.
Yeah, like for example, in some Ghanaian weddings, there's this tradition where the bride's family will actually hide her away.
Oh, wow.
And the groom has to go and search for her with gifts and blessings from his family.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like this whole symbolic joining of the two families.
That's a great example of how, the whole community gets involved, right?
Right. It's not just about the couple themselves.
Exactly.
And it's like a way to show the importance of family and community in the marriage.
Yeah, and it's not just in Ghana. You see similar traditions in other parts of Africa as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
For example, in Nigeria, there's a tradition called the knocking on the door ceremony,
Oh, interesting.
where the groom's family goes to the bride's family's house to formally request her hand in marriage.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah, it's a very symbolic gesture, and it really shows the importance of getting the family's blessings.
Right. It's like a way to ensure that everyone's on board and supportive of the union.
Exactly. And this is something that's really important in many Black cultures because marriage is seen as a union not just between two individuals, but between two families and communities.
Yeah, it's like a social contract in a way.
Absolutely. And it's really beautiful to see how these traditions reflect that.
Yeah, and it's not just limited to Africa either, right? Like we see
No, not at all.
influences of these traditions in the diaspora as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Like jumping the broom,
Yeah, jumping the broom is a great example.
which originated in West Africa, is a tradition that's been carried on in many Black communities in the Americas.
Yeah, and it's actually really interesting how that tradition evolved, because during slavery, Black couples were often denied the right to legally marry.
Right.
So jumping the broom became a way for them to symbolize their union and commitment to each other.
Yeah, it's like a symbol of resilience in the face of oppression.
Exactly. And it's a tradition that continues to hold a lot of meaning for many Black couples today.
Right. It's a reminder of their history and heritage.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note that not all of these traditions have stayed exactly the same over time.
Right. They've evolved and adapted as people have migrated and blended with other cultures.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so fascinating to study these practices, You can see how they've changed and adapted over time and place, but still retain that core essence of community and spirituality.
And speaking of spirituality, I'm curious to know more about the role of faith in these marriages.
Oh, that's a great question.
Um, because it seems like it's not always about organized religion, but more about a broader sense of connection to something larger than themselves.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Right.
It's about
Yes.
connecting to something bigger than themselves.
Right.
And it can manifest in different ways for different couples.
Right. And it might be traditional African spiritual practices for some,
Mm.
or it might be their chosen faith for others.
Yeah, or even a blend of both.
Yeah.
A lot of Black communities have this rich history of blending different spiritual traditions.
All right. It's like a syncretism of different beliefs.
Exactly. And that's really reflected in how they approach marriage as well.
So I guess the takeaway here is that cultural practices in Black marriages are incredibly diverse and rich,
Yeah.
and they really reflect the importance of community, family, and spirituality in these unions.
Absolutely. And I think it's really inspiring to see how these traditions have been passed down through generations.
Right, and how they continue to evolve and adapt while still honoring their heritage.
Exactly, and it's a reminder that marriage is more than just a legal contract.
Right.
It's about community, it's about family, it's about spirituality, and it's about love.
That's beautifully put.
Thank you.
And I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
But before we go, I'd like to leave our listeners with a question to ponder.
Okay.
How do you think these cultural practices contribute to the enduring strength of Black families, especially in the face of historical and societal challenges?
Yeah, that's a great question for everyone to think about.
Yeah, and I think it's something that we can all learn from.
Absolutely.
So that's it for this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.